Hello YouTube, and welcome to a new episode of the Educated Barbarian, starting right now. The reason why a man is devoid of the will to serve is because of pride. He is convinced that he is right, and reasons everything in his own favor, becoming set in immoral ways, and thinking himself as outstanding. It is worthy of severe condemnation. So when it comes to offering yourself in service, in the context of the period of shoujo, it was serving the shogun, it was serving the superior. And the hierarchy was actually quite well defined. When it comes to us, when it comes to our lives, who are we going to serve? Who do we serve? Some people serve their boss. If you work for a big company, you serve your manager, in a sense, you serve your boss. These could be considered service, but is it? Are you willingly doing that, or is it just because you get money in exchange? For the most part, it's that. If you weren't being paid, you wouldn't be doing that. So try and find the things in your life that you actually do willingly, but you're not being paid. There's no retribution. These are acts of service, for the most part, because you're not expecting anything in return. So those are the people that you need to pay attention to, because they are the ones that actually matter to you, whether you want to believe that or not. Since you do things, you go out of your way to help them, they matter a lot. And that act of service can be impaired by pride. If you think yourself higher than others, and if you think yourself as being above service, then as Shoujo describes, this is worthy of severe condemnation. Because if you've created a world where you can always find a reason to not be of use of someone else, you end up not being of use for yourself either, because you've limited yourself. Passing down knowledge and being helpful is key, and it's key biologically, it's key in terms of the construction of society, because it's what keeps us together, and it's what also actually keeps us advancing and progressing. If humans had always been selfish creatures that refused to engage with others, we would have never made any leeway in terms of evolution. And on the other hand, if humans were only serviceable creatures, we wouldn't have done that either, we would still be ants. So there is a middle ground to be found here. Powers of judgment, artistry, status, riches, aptitudes, and inventiveness are all attributes in which pride is justified. Thinking these are enough, however, he will become narrow-minded, never ask others for their opinion, and squander his life on piddling trivialities. So it's the mistake of thinking that your worth can only be found in qualities that make you exceptional as an individual. Kindness is still going to be, to me, a value that is going to be extremely important. If you are devoid of kindness, as Shoujo often says, the other qualities sort of lose their shine because you are missing the most important ingredient. Expunge yourself of deluded pride. Know your faults, find ways to better yourself, and keep seeking improvement throughout your life, without ever being satisfied until your last breath. Being aware of your imperfections and trying to remedy them is precisely the way of the warrior. So that's what I said before. In a sense, you are helping people, you are being of service, but you're also helping yourself. Why? Because you are opening yourself for the reflection that others have on you, and the critiques that they can offer, which help you on your way. Because if you seclude yourself, and if you think yourself as perfect, you will stop working. Because you're perfect. There is no reason to keep working. When you work, you expect progression. And a work that is not going to conduce to any progression is not work anymore, and therefore is not going to happen. This is what Shoujo is trying to say. This is a trick. A lot of the things that people say are moral, it's not really for the word. You're not being moral to help other people. You're being moral because it preserves you. I wouldn't say it's an advanced understanding of morality, but I don't see many people discussing that. A lot of people are moral because they fear the judgment of society, and that's good because in a sense it keeps them in check, and what they don't realize is that it's not keeping them in check for society's sake. Society would just easily do without them or get rid of them if they became an issue because of their lack of morality. What the truth is, for them to be able to remain within society, which is beneficial for them, they need to be prevented from straying away from the morals which the only way to do that is by convincing them that they do that for others so that they can preserve their own standing. So it's that convoluted creation. Basically, morality is much more complicated than just, oh, do that because it's right. No, it's the social contract, basically. There is a saying, killing the ox by trying to fix the angle of its horns. So what would that entail? Well, you have an ox, and let's say the horns of the ox are not perfectly straight, and you want to fix them, and you fix them, and somehow something happens. You move the bone the wrong way, the brain is being deranged, and the ox dies. So the idea behind that is that you had a perfectly fine ox, but because you wanted perfection and you wanted that little detail to be a little bit different, you made it worse, and you didn't just make it 2 times worse. You made it 100 times worse. I think something that everyone can relate to, because the ox thing, I mean, a lot of people don't own oxes. A thing that you can relate to is you made a painting, or you made a picture, or you made something, and there is that tiny detail that you don't like, and you go and you correct it, and as you do, you correct that one detail, and 5 other things around the detail change. So you made it worse. That's what shoujo is trying to say here. Nothing excessive is good. Even Buddhist sermons, lectures, and lessons in moral behavior can be harmful if expounded on too much. I think the saying is the dose is in the poison, the dose makes the poison. Everything in moderation, all right? All of these sayings have a meaning. They mean something because they're true. There is not a single thing that is good in excess. Oxygen, if you breathe too fast, you're going to pass out. If you drink too much water, you could die. If you eat too much salt, you're going to have hypertension through the roof, and you are going to have heart problems. If you eat 50 eggs a day, you're going to have heart problems, etc., etc. There is no such thing as something that can be consumed infinitely and not be harmful. The same goes for training. Training too much, you're just going to be overtrained, you're never going to progress. So always keep that in mind. The opposite is not true. There are things that can be good if never consumed. And there are things that can be harmful even if consumed in small quantities. So that proverb only goes one way in a sense. There are 2 kinds of willpower, internal and external. A man who is deficient in either will be ineffectual. It is like a sword blade that's sharpened and then stored in its scabbard. Every so often it is unsheathed to test its cutting power on a highbrow, whipped clean and then put away again. If a man is constantly swinging his sword about, others will keep their distance and he will make no friends. A sword always inside its scabbard, however, will rust and become dull. Analogous to this, people will belittle a man who never reveals his power of will. Convoluted. Lots of metaphors. Internal and external willpower. So what is internal willpower? It's the willpower that you don't show the world, right? You don't want to train, but you're going to train regardless. You go and you train. No one knows. No one knows. It's internal, okay? You are in a cafeteria and there's food that you want, but you know it's not good for you. You don't get it. Internal willpower. No one knows, okay? External willpower now. Random example. You're with a group of friends. You have a boyfriend or girlfriend. Someone comes to you that's attractive and that tries to hit on you. And you say no. You just showed the group of friends that you have integrity. You showed external willpower. You're in a confrontation and you refuse to back down and you stand your ground. You are showing external willpower. What shoujo says is that an excess of both can result in either a shriveling of your own ego or a poor image that is going to be spread and captured by other people, and they're going to hold you in poor esteem. So for example, if you're the type of person who's only internal and who never externalizes it, you might be someone who's afraid of confrontation. You might be someone who is seen as a doormat by other people. Why? Because you have never been able to actually transcend the internal nature of your willpower and express it, okay? And on the other hand, if you are the type of person who's always boisterous, always imposes his will on others, people are not going to like you because you're a tyrant. So there needs to be something in between. And usually the person who tends to be the most outlandish, the most outgoing with their willpower, tend to be the one that lack internal willpower. That's a different discussion. That's what I said, that this is a little bit nebulous in the way Shoujo explained it, is because you can make a show of willpower and lack it completely. Someone who tells you, I'm going to go on a diet, and they tell 50 people, I'm going to go on a diet, when they are by themselves, they are not sticking to the diet. So they lack that internal willpower, and their external willpower was a lie to begin with. And again, if you don't use your willpower, internal or external, it rusts. You need to practice it. Two warriors met on a one-lane bridge, but refused to give way, threatening to cut each other down if the other did not move. A radish seller came between the two men, and catching each one on either hand of his shoulder, carrying a pole, picked them up and spun them around to the opposite ends of the bridge. There are many ways to solve problems, and this counts as constructive service to one's lord. So, the ego of the two samurai was too important for them to let the other person pass. They both wanted to be the one to go first. They were about to kill themselves. They were about to actually engage in a sword fight, and potentially one or the two of them would be injured and die. Someone who had nothing to do with the confrontation came, picked them up with a pole, and just spun them around, okay? The issue was immediately resolved. Why? Because the way the two men crossed path meant that they could save face. And they could have done that by themselves, is what Shoujo is trying to say. They could have been courteous, but the issue again is that the first person who would have been courteous would have been seen as weak. So it's in those moments where we know that we have an easy way out of the situation, but our ego is way too strong and we don't want to let go, we don't want to give up. Shoujo is telling you that there is always a way, meaning that if you don't want to appear meek or weak, you might not have the luck of having someone who sells radish come and pick you up and spin you around, but you can find a different way. There's always a different way. Rooted in the word can, remonstrance, are self-seeking desires. There can be no altruistic remonstration. Quite deep. 2 sentences, but there's a lot of things to unpack here. So what Shoujo says is, if you make a remonstrance to someone, it's coming from your own ego. And it's something that I've noticed, meaning that people will reproach you things that they reproach to themselves, but that they actually never verbalize when it comes to their behavior. So they need an outlet. They need someone else. And that someone else is you. This is why sometimes someone will tell you something about your behavior or your conduct, and you'll think, this doesn't sound like me, but it does sound like someone, meaning that it's so precise, it feels so personal and rooted in actual feelings and facts that it's a little bit jarring, because you know it's not you, but you know it's someone. You know that it's not just an invention, that someone is the person who makes the remonstrance. It comes from their ego, it comes from within. And so, there can be no altruistic remonstrations. And what he means by that is not necessarily guidelines or advices. That's different. A remonstrance is saying to someone, you did something wrong, and usually it's in public, so it's a way for them to crush you. And as Shoujo says, it's not for the good of the person, it's for your own good, because it makes you feel good. You can advise people, but always try and be kind when you do that, because you might think that the thing that they are doing is abhorrently stupid, but they don't. To correct the ways of other people is harder than rectifying your own. First, you must be amiable with everyone. The key is to be secretly loved by being on good terms with those who are close to you, as well as those who are not so well acquainted with you. I can say from experience that it is easier to accept opinions from those whom we can empathize with. Okay. So he's telling you don't give remonstrances, and he's then giving you a way to be able to access people so that they can listen to you. Okay. If you believe that you are a good role model and that you can actually guide them. And it's sort of, it's a parallel with this channel, it's what I'm trying to do. People are going to take advice from a certain type of individual. And when it comes to fitness, if you're not big, if you cannot demonstrate what you're actually preaching, people won't listen to you. If it is perceived that you're doing something for ego's sake or for greed, people will not listen to you. If it is perceived that you might be of choleric nature, people will not listen to you. There are a lot of things to be avoided. And when it comes to individual relationships, what Shoujo says is that you need to be nice and kind to everyone, be on good terms with everyone, and be someone that they can relate to, so that they think of you as a part of them, in a sense, an extension, someone that they entertain a kinship with. And as he says, it's harder to correct the ways of others compared to correcting your own. In actuality, yes, meaning that if you actually go through with it, yes, but when it comes to trying, it's the opposite. It's much easier to try and correct other people. It's much harder to correct your own ways because you are blind to your own ways. We see the mistakes of others much more than we see our own. This is why Shoujo tells you that you need to have a circle of people around you to your benefit. When making a suggestion, it should be in accordance with his circumstances and character. Keep his temperament in mind and start with something that it might like to hear. There are many ways to make your point. If you speak of a man's foibles in an accusatory manner, he most likely won't pay attention to you. Why would he feel gratified if you are condescending and treat him as if he is flawed? This is touching upon something that is quite prevalent in humans. It's human nature. We don't want and we don't like having people tell us we're wrong. It's an ego thing. Even if you are wrong, demonstratively and objectively, you don't like that. And it can be quite frustrating if you're the type of person who is a straight shooter and who doesn't like sugarcoating things. It's not a practice that you're going to be really happy when you engage in it, but you have to. Because telling someone, hey, you're wrong and this is why you're wrong, it's not going to work. You just doomed that person. I've seen that, and sometimes I wonder if certain people use that strategy to their advantage when it comes to manipulating people. But if you see someone doing something stupid, if you tell them, hey, you're stupid, that person will keep doing that thing for 40 years. Because as an ego reaction, they're going to be attached to that thing. Because now it's their own personal thing. It's their way. It's their way of doing things, and you attacked it. So now they're going to protect it even more. There was a study that showed that if someone is fed misinformation and you attack them as if they were the ones who were an idiot for believing in that, not only do they not change their mind, they become more attached to that misinformation. And you see that nowadays. You see people who believe in lies, straight up lies. Demonstratively, these things are not true, and you cannot change their mind. It can be quite strange, it can be quite scary, because it literally feels like that ideology has become a part of their psyche. It is now inseparable. You cannot make them not believe that. It's in their brains, it's over. Nothing will change it. Even acts of violence that are going to be caused by the thing they believe will not change it, even if their family or themselves are victims of it. I have seen it with my eyes. It is, as I said, terrifying, because the more people are affected by that, the less of an objective society we have. So that's what Shoujo says. Don't be an advocate of that. Don't be the person who creates those puppets, because you can create them easily. You have to be kind. You have to try and find a way to navigate around the temperament of the person. You have to sugarcoat things. And it's frustrating if you think that you are on the right path, you think that you have the truth, quote unquote. You just want people to be on your side. You don't want to have to cajole them into maybe trying to come and, take a peek. You just want them on your side. It doesn't work like that. Most likely they are camping on their position because there is someone else, or there is a power out there that made them believe that, and it took years and years to get them there. You're not going to get them back easily. Plus, most of the time when people get manipulated, the people who manipulate create what I would call safeguards, meaning that they're going to create portions of dialogue or text that are going to be triggered by what you say. So if you say one thing to try and get them to your side, they already have a response because they were already told that this one thing would be used to try and get them out of the position. That's a different topic altogether. The topic of manipulation I will eventually discuss in details when I start talking about a certain book that I have in mind for the Educated Barbarian. First, confess your own imperfections and make a statement along the lines of, I have a long-standing desire to purge myself of my failings, but I am unable to do so on my own. I would like your opinion in confidence as I consider you to be an intimate friend. The other person will likely respond, I felt the same way. In that case, you could suggest that you both exchange opinions, and with each other's feelings understood, bad habits can be mended. So you might think that this is hypocritical because Shoujo doesn't really want you to actually do that. He doesn't want you to listen to the person who tells you what he thinks is wrong with you. He just does that so that the person is now more open to receiving your advice. I wouldn't say it's hypocritical. I would say that in this case, I think Shoujo still believes that there is gain to be made for you because you can still receive something that's going to shock you. Again, I speak of those things. I speak of manipulation. I speak of positions that you have in your head that were put there. But maybe I have some of these and eventually someone is going to break them for me. And that person is going to use a strategy like this. Might sound childish, that's the way humans are. You cannot be a bull. You cannot rush people. You cannot try and force people to change. You have to let them change yourselves. And it's the entire idea of the inception. If they think that the idea came from them, they are going to change. The second they realize that the idea is coming from someone else, they will never change. And I'm going to do one last, and we're going to stop. If you see a man who has amended his comportment, even a little, nurture this further by lavishing praise. He will try even harder to improve himself. That's quite true. Pedagogically, that makes a lot of sense. I find that this cannot be used with certain individuals because they're the type that if they do something right and you tell them that it's good, they're going to immediately fall back on their old ways of deception, lies, and bad behavior because you made them feel good. And so you it was a mistake. And the issue with these people is that making them feel bad doesn't really work either because it just makes them double down. And they tend to be people that, when they grew up, were either way too praised or not praised enough, and they reached a point where they couldn't be changed anymore. And sadly, there is a very low chance of these individuals ever changing. Sometimes it's just too late. They're going to be like that for the rest of their lives. I'm going to leave you with that. We're on page 192 at the paragraph 131. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.